श्रुतिस्मृतिपुराणानाम् आलयं करुणालयं नमामि भगवत्पाद शङ्करं लोकशङ्करं समस्तजनकल्याणे निरतं करुणामयं नमामि चिन्मयं देवं सद्गुरुं ब्रह्मविद्वरम् मूकं करोति वाचालं पङ्गुं लङ्घयते गिरिं यत्कृपातमहं वन्दे परमानन्दमाधवम् परमानन्दमाधवम्. Okay. So we are doing the text Panchadashi, chapter 1, which is called Tattva Viveka. Yeah. So in this, we have seen up to, I think, verse 4 we have completed last time, where we have seen that verse 3 we have completed, sorry, where we have seen the waking state being described. Yeah. And before that, as an introduction, I mentioned that the fundamental message of Vedanta will be described between 3 and 10, where the Jivatma is established as that Sat Chit Ananda. Yeah? So that is the general introduction, that the Jivatma will be proved to be of the nature of Satchit Ananda, and that automatically then proves that it is same as that of Ishvara, which the Shastras define. So that will be the general trend in terms of what we will see for us to understand this particular concept. Yeah? And in that, we have already gone through, because Jivatma will be proved to be Satchidananda, the concept of consciousness and the definition, the nature of the consciousness is being described by Swamiji here, to make sure that and he links this to human experience. And how do we define human experience per se? Is every day we go through 3 states, avasthas, as they call, Jagrad Avastha, Swapna Avastha, and Sushupti Avastha, which in turn means that waking state, dream state, and deep sleep state. So in the very first verse, the consciousness with respect to the waking state is being described by Swami Vidyaranyaji, who is the author of this particular Prakarana Grantha. I will be using these terms so that you will recollect what they are. Yeah? And we have seen that that particular Chaitanyam is described as the waking state, where whatever in the waking state one will experience is described as Shabda Sparshat Dayo Vedya Vaichitya Jagare Pruthak and Tato Vibhakta Tat Samved Aikya Rupyanna Bhidyate. So in this, very, very important terms are used by Swamiji. That is the greatness of Swami Vidyaranya, basically, that he doesn't leave anything to our imagination. Even a small explanation that is required to be given so that there is no misunderstanding with respect to what message he is trying to give. Yeah? And we have seen that in this particular, the entire waking state experience is described here in terms of the 5 sense objects. Shabda Sparsha Dayo Vedya. Shabda Sparshadi means Shabda Sparsha Rupa Rasa Gandha. We have seen this, that 5 sense objects, through the 5 sense organs, we collect the sensory perception, and that in turn defines my entire experience with the outside world. Yeah, if I am experiencing the world outside, it is through one of these sense objects. If it is even within these sense objects, some of them are outside our perception. For example, sound, human ear is capable of listening to only one segment of the total sound, so to say. Yeah, and for example, a dog might have a better range of hearing than a human being, but my experience is limited to that particular world. Yeah. So what we are trying to do here is to crystallize the entire world into only 5 different sense perceptions. Irrespective of whatever experience we have with outside world is limited to only these 5. Shabda, Sparsha, Rupa, Rasa, Gandha. I hope everybody is clear with these words. I don't need to repeat. Yeah. So the sound, touch, form, taste, smell represents this entire world to me. But then, how do I experience these 5 different sense perceptions that come in through the sense organs that are placed strategically by the Ishvara? Is all in the thought form. So really speaking, if my mind is not there, the world is not there. Yeah. So my entire experience of the world, so-called world, is only happening in my mind. And unfortunately or fortunately, we do apply lot of filters to the input that is coming from outside. Yeah. This in turn, I think hopefully he will talk about this later. This is called Jiva Srishti, which actually makes the entire world experience different for each one of us. I may see the same tree in front of me. A botanist will see a different aspect of that tree because he applies a different filter. Same tree is there, outside object, Ishvara Srishti did not change. But in my mind, my experience changes with with what I am filtering it, that information that is coming in. That is where the mind comes in. Yeah? So here, what Swamiji is trying to say is that although the sense organs are there and the information is coming from outside, which sense organ I am asking or I am deciding to be or chosen by the jiva will be the sensory perception that impacts me personally. My eyes are open, my ears are open, my nose is open. I cannot do anything about the sensory perceptions that are coming in. That's why sometimes even though I don't want to, I continue to have these sensory perceptions coming in. If my eyes are open, that particular whatever is there in front of my eyes can come inside. But how I react to that is a choice that a jiva exercise. So although every sense object is open, here what the verse is telling is that particular sense organ which is chosen by the jiva will be active at a given time. So if I am for example, if I am in a mood to listening, that means I have activated my ear rather than the other sense organs, for example, because I had my lunch and my every other thing is the palate is this one. I'm not bothered even if a good smell comes in, for example, and I'm in a mood to listen. Then I've activated my ear sense organ, and sound is the one which comes in, and I start enjoying the beautiful songs, etc., bhajans, whatever we choose. That will become the most active one. But then again, how will I experience that particular sound when it comes in? Is all through as a still the experience of that sound is not really a sound that is outside, but it is a thought inside my brain. So whole of my experience can be reduced to a thought or vritti. Yeah. So here when we say that vritti is there and I'm enjoying, the words are now can be split as I am enjoying the music. Let us say that that thing is there. How is the music that I'm enjoying? It is always in the thought form only. So it is just a thought in my mind, and I am enjoying that thought. Outside music is happening anyway, but inside, my experience is definitely only a thought. Then question comes as to how this thought is being recognized, because I am also seeing, I am also listening, I am also smelling, I am also maybe chanting outside that bhajan, but my enjoyment of that bhajan is in my mind in a vritti form, but my cognition of sound is more uh, more uh, 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 more clear in terms of, because I'm employing that particular consciousness to that sound thought which is in my mind. Yeah? So here what we are telling is that that particular vritti or the thought that I am telling I am enjoying, how is that I am enjoying is what Swami Vijayaranya brings in. So he is telling that unless that consciousness comes and envelops that thought, that phalavyapti will not take place. So I think Jayaji has explained this many times before, that there are two aspects to this cognition that takes place. One is called vrittivyapti, means the consciousness as though goes out, envelops the inert objects, inert sense objects outside, including sound, for example, and brings that into your mind as a vritti. So this is called vrittivyapti. But that recognition of that vritti becomes most important. That is where the consciousness as though envelops that thought inside your mind. Really speaking, without consciousness, even that vritti doesn't come in. So that vritti vyapti, which we call as the consciousness as though goes out, envelops the object and brings it into my mind, that means even vritti has happened because of the mind, because of the consciousness. And inside my mind, recognition of that becomes also happens because of the consciousness. Now you see that my entire world that I am talking about is nothing but that consciousness. Whatever experience we are going through is happening only because of the consciousness. Because the consciousness is the one which coagulates, so to say, as vritti, and then the same consciousness recognizes that vritti and gives a cognition of that particular sense object that is coming in, and that in turn makes me either enjoy. So always we say that it is enjoyed. Bhoktrutvam. Bhokta is the enjoyer. Bhoktrutvam is the state of enjoyment. Whether it is good or bad really doesn't matter. Both are bhokta, bhoktrutvam. So here, when we talk about from this perspective, now you see there is a consciousness behind. And the consciousness is the one which brings in the objects into your mind as a thought. And then the consciousness helps recognize that particular thought of what it constitutes. And then we say that I am the enjoyer of the music. So the I-ness is also part of that consciousness which is there associated with this. Now, when we talk about in terms of this I, the I becomes the consciousness. How? Because unless it is a conscious entity, it is not possible to cognize something. And inertness cannot bring out a consciousness within it. So mind cannot produce consciousness. Maybe like some of the scientists may believe that, but Vedanta says that inert substance consciousness cannot come on its own. Yeah, inert substance can appear conscious, like mind appears conscious, body appears conscious, but that consciousness must be essentially different from the inert envelopments which we call as this pancha koshas, really speaking, annamaya kosha, pranamaya kosha, etc., etc. Yeah. So there is always, once we start analyzing my own waking experience, I clearly see myself as the Vishaya, Vishayi means the one who is experiencing the object, and there is something called Vishaya in terms of the vritti or the thought in my mind. So entire world, my experience of Jagrada Avastha is now being split into two, Vishaya and Vishayi. Vishayi means subject. Vishaya is the object. So I am the Vishayi, I am the subject of that particular this one. However, my being a subject somehow gets entangled with the mind in the thought form where the ego starts. So I take upon that particular that experience of being a subject, although the consciousness is away from that, my thought somehow brings that particular this one, say, I, the small ego, becomes the experiencer of this entire world. And once I say the thought is an experiencer, my normal way of thinking is I have different experiences in my waking state. So I have an experience of whatever object that comes in front of me, I become that in terms of my experiencership. So I can become a seer if I employ my eyes, listener if I employ my ears, smeller if I employ the nose, etc., etc. All the five, I take upon that particular this as the different experiences I am having. By Swamiji, by using this term Aikya Rupyena, as I mentioned in my last class, very clearly says that this is the most fundamental error. Because my experience says that, my experience feels like that, I say that I am having different experiences in this world. However, by the term Aikya Rupyena, he is telling that uniform single consciousness just will be there, and many experiences happen, and those experiences, because unless the consciousness is there, none of those experiences possible. He is telling that they're all the same consciousness being given a different name of being an experiencer. You can even give example of our own relationship with our people around. Yeah. So I am remains the same, but I can be a father, a grandfather, a mama, and to my own parents, I am the son, I am the grandson. I can have different roles that I play depending upon a different relationship that comes in front of me, but I remain the same. Although my experience is different, but I remain the same. Similarly, the consciousness remains the same. However, different experiences happen in front of me. How do I know that it is the same consciousness and I'm not a different consciousness is there for hearing a different consciousness, for listening a different consciousness, for seeing a different consciousness? It's possible that one might think like that because my experience is like that as a waker. Because I even say that I'm a good listener. People claim that my eyesight is very strong. I don't require a specs. I can see 6x6, maybe much higher than that as well. Yeah, some people actually have that this one of seeing 1 mile away, etc. And those are the people who draw on the small rice grain, etc., without any instrument. Some people are capable of that. But what we know for sure is if the consciousness is different consciousnesses are there for each of these experiences, then I will not be in a position to combine them together, because these sense perceptions which are there are distinct from each other. They are not together. Tato vibhakta. They're all distinct in terms of their experience, because my sound that goes in remains as sound, and my sight, that whatever form that comes in, remains as form. There's no confusion when I cannot see with my ears, for example. I cannot hear with my eyes. Very, very distinct in terms of the sense objects and the perception. But once they go inside, somehow in the mind where the consciousness comes and touches those vrittis, I am able to put them together. So when a cake is brought in front of me, I am able to say that that it is soft to touch with, it is, the smell is vanilla, taste is so and so, it tastes either good or bad, or sometimes it has gone bad. All that I'm able to combine them. When by seeing, I may not know all that, but when I bring in the other senses, I'm able to combine them all together, which actually kind of proves to me that it is of one nature. Consciousness that recognizes the sense objects is one of one nature, and that particular thing is called tato vibhakta. Yeah, the knower of these sense objects is definitely not different ones. They are all one and the same. And also that particular this one remains Aikya Rupa, in the sense that that consciousness is different from the sense objects that are there outside, even the vrittis that are there inside. Same sense objects are in the name of or in the form of a thought, and the consciousness is actually away from that. They are not really there. It's as if they rise in them and go back to them. This is like a big ocean, for example, is there. Different levels and different forms of the different forms of waves come out of that ocean. Ocean remains the same. There's, in fact, even the waves that are there, although they look different, they are given a different name because of that. The very fact that it has got a different name, wave, appears that wave is different from the ocean. But really speaking, they are of the same nature, and only the name and form temporarily comes up for that particular thing, what we call as the ocean. Similarly, this consciousness is one, Aikya Rupena, and we experience this entire world in terms of this. And another thing the term uses is samvit. Samvit is something like, if I know something very well, that is samvit. And the things which I know very well are the ones where I have the direct experience and I don't require any instruments, for example. Yeah. So samvit somehow conveys the meaning of that particular knowledge where there is no further instrument is required for me. So consciousness has got that ability somehow of cognizing all these sense perceptions that are coming into the mind in the form of a thought, and there it is able to grasp that without further instrumentation. So there is nothing in between. Like, for example, I require the eyes for seeing an object outside, but consciousness does not require any further eyes to look at the thought and recognize that form and color which has come in through my mind. So that's what is indicative of the word samvit. So the samvit term, Aikya Rupena, Tato Vibhakta, very, very important concepts that are given by Swami Vidyaranya in the very first verse. And it also explains the way we operate in this world. How in the waking state, consciousness becomes the key in terms of operating my entire waking experience. And that particular experience is one in terms of consciousness, and there are no different experiences. That is the fundamental error in terms of this, that I am having different experiences. In fact, what Swamiji is indicating here is that there are no different experiences. It is only the consciousness that is given different names based on the experience one may be seeing as different in the form of a thought inside. So this is how the entire waking example is taken up in terms of the consciousness by Swamiji in verse 3. Yeah. Mohiniji, any question?
Yeah, could it be because we have just finished chapter 14? Could it be that because of our that gunas, trigunas, like sattvic, rajasic, they are the main experiences behind how we experience different things in different ways? Consciousness is same. The function of all the indriyas is same. but those gunas, which is our blueprint according to Jayaji, so that
Correct.
makes us to think and react or experience same thing differently, though
You are
consciousness
absolutely
is same.
right.
Okay.
You are absolutely right. But actually, one more thing I will add to that. Definitely, it is the gunas which actually make up that. But for us to experience differently, there is one more step in between. The gunas are at a very subtle level of causal body, but there is something called a vasana, means the inclinations that these gunas actually create and keep as an individual vasana that is given to you as prarabdha karma at the when you take birth. We have option to change that with our actions, that is there, but it is this vasana which actually pushes you into a particular direction and also makes the experience different from each other. But why that vasana is there is because of that gunas. You are right in that sense, but one step in between is there in our experience as such, if I may say so.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. So we'll go into fourth verse. Any other questions from anybody? Okay. तथा स्वप्नेत्र वेद्यन्तु नास्तिरं जागरे स्थिरं तद्भेदो तस्य तस्तयो संविद एकरूपान भिद्यते तथा स्वप्नेत्र वेद्यन्तु नास्तिरं जागरे स्थिरं तद्भेदो तस्य यो संविद ekarupanna bhidyate. So here, after describing the waking state as such, now we are going into the next this one, which is the swapna state or the dream state. So in terms of the dream state, swapne in the dream state, atra vedyantu na sthiram. Vedya is a term that is used for objects. Veda is knowledge. Vedyantu means the entire knowledge that I gather of the universe is what Vedyantu is. And as I mentioned before, the entire universe is now now consolidated as 5 silos of 5 different sense object experiences. The entire world is now being looked at from that perspective. So this Vedyantu means the entire sense objects that are outside there. Yeah? In Swapna, they are all na sthiram. Sthiram means it is, sthiram is very consolidated, solid, the thing is called sthiram. Na sthiram is fleeting. There, it is not very solid in terms of our experience in Swapna. So in Swapna also, what we are seeing is the experience remains more or less exactly in line with our waking state. The only difference is the objects are fleeting. In the sense that I may be the same in my dream as well. I may have a similar body because my physical body I am leaving. It is lying on my bed, but I am moving around everywhere. Yeah, I may be in Himalayas, I may be in Tirupati. I can go anywhere during my dream state, and I experience the entire set of objects just like my waking state. However, here the objects are not really as solid as my experience in the waking state is. So here, very beautifully, Swamiji is telling that swapne atra vedyantu nasthiram. It is not very, it is a fleeting experience of the objects. And it is all our experience. Yeah? We may be seeing that suddenly I am in front of a waterfall and suddenly that waterfall is going and I am having a different experience. So it is not, and in my waking state, it is not that easy. If I really go to visit a waterfall in Banff, then I'll have to wait for it to come down somewhere. And physically, these objects appear more solid in my waking state and not so in terms of my dream state. But is my experience in any way different? because whole of my dream is based on my experiences in the waking, whether in this life or previous life or previous life or previous life, doesn't matter. I must have experienced something which is there, or the experience can also be virtual, or not very real experiences that we are talking about. But if somebody has written something on in a book form, and I happen to read that, for example, I may get that in my dream as well. So dragons may come in into my dream where I have never experienced them before. Now, at least, I don't know whether I have experienced in any other disciplines, but mostly my dreams are based on my real experiences, as well as the knowledge that I gather in so-called my objects. Objects, when I say all the 5 sense objects that we are looking at, I must have gathered as a form of the knowledge that I gain by the by reading, by listening. So somebody went to Himalayas or Alps and comes back and gives a wonderful description of that. That might become basis for my own dream, and because I have listened and I have gathered and I have experienced that, so to say, in my mind. Yeah? So always the swapna, the objects are more in terms of a fleeting nature, but my experience remains in line with my waking. Yeah, but sometimes I may mix up things, because I heard about aeroplane, and I have then fallen off a cliff in my dream, and suddenly I know that there is a possibility of flying, and I start flying around in my dream. So there is a mix-up of the concepts that I have learned in my waking state. So the objects are very fleeting, and objects are not the same. So one time it may happen this way. In the second, we may have a different type of experience when it comes to the dream state. Tad Vedaha. The only difference is that, what is that? Tayoho, that Jagrat Swapna state which is there, yeah. Sorry, there is one more term that is used, is Jagare Sthiram. So in the waking state, they exist for a longer period of time. These objects are experienced for a longer period of time, but my experience of the objects is fleeting in my dream. Apart from that, whole of the concept of experience remains the same. How? Because in my waking state, I am telling, whole of my experience is nothing but a thought. And if you see what is there in my dream state, because my body is lying, my eyes are closed, people are shouting around, if I'm in deep sleep or even my dream going on, I'm not aware of the outside sounds which are there. So world exists outside, but my own experience is only in the form of my mind. My vasanas, which drive this again, vasanas remain the driving force even for the dream experience. And these experience, that objects which are there, are also made up of the same mind, and the experience is exactly like my Jagare state or the waking state, and they continue to be in the form of thoughts. And whenever we are talking of a thought, a consciousness becomes an inevitable part of my experiencing that particular thought. So it is the same. But thing is, it appears as if the person in the dream is different from the person in the waking. That's why we give, in the Shastras, give 2 different names as well. The experiencer in the waking state is called Vishwa, and experiencer in the dream state is called Taijasa. I think we have these three actually are there. Vishwa, Taijasa, Prajna. Prajna is for the deep sleep. We will come to that in the next verse. So this Vishwa appears to be different from Taijasa, who is experiencing the dream state. Vishwa was the one who experienced the waking state, so to say. Why? Because they appear to be different. In my dream state, my body is lying somewhere on the bed, but I am just moving around in whatever form I take for that particular dream experience. So there is a body that is associated with that. There is a different type of mind, different capacity is available in the Jagrat. I am limited by my physical body, but because I am developing a body in my dream, my body can fly around, my body can run at 100 kilometers. But once I wake up, I may not be even walking may be difficult for me, for all we know. But in dream, I have no such limitations. It appears to be different. So experientially, Vishwa appears to be different from Taijasa. However, what this particular thing, again, the word samvit is used by Swamiji here, mainly to say, Tayoho Jat Jagrat Swapna se samvid na vidyate. That one consciousness that is there behind does not change. It remains exactly the same like in waking state. I have different experiences in my dream, like I have different experiences in my waking. And I may be having all the five senses coming in my dream, or maybe if unfortunately in the dream I am not able to see, I'm a blind man moving around in my dream, one of the sense objects is missing, for example. It's possible in waking, I'm okay, but in my dream, I can have one less, or a person who is not able to hear in the waking state, in dream, ears perfectly work because that experience was there before. He became deaf, for example. So in dream, that may come back. One sense that is not available in my waking comes back in my dream because that experience is there, that thought is there. However, whatever the experiences that I am gaining in my dream, enjoying that particular dream, it may be a nightmare, still we call that as an enjoyment only. Enjoying that dream, that consciousness is one consciousness similar to waking, which is different from the thoughts. Vritti is different. How do I know? Because I remains that I concept still remains. That's why we are calling that as Taijasa, and that I consciousness remains one in terms of the different experiences I have in my dream. So in the dream also, if there is a plant that I am putting in, beautiful rose flower plant that I put, I require to pour dream water. I require to put dream manure for it to come out with a beautiful flowers that I will experience, although it will happen within 1 second that I put everything, pour water, and I see a beautiful rose coming out in dream. That experience is there. But as far as the consciousness is concerned, exactly like in my waking state, remains different, remains one. Because even in the dream state, different sense objects may be coming in the thought form, and my experience of them, and I'm able to bring all of them together into one experience as far as the dream is concerned. So, samvid na bidhyate, that one consciousness does not change. And he doesn't leave with that. He says, ekarupa. He says, samvid ekarupa na bidhyate. Not only samvid na bidhyate, not only that particular knowledge doesn't require further instrument, that particular knowledge is the consciousness which is there, which is experiencing the dream also in the thought form like I am doing in my waking state, but it is of ekarupa. Ekarupa means it is of uniform and continuous consciousness that I experience. Why he used the word this ekarupa is to say, although experientially I may be having different doership, enjoyership. It is there because once I wake up for my dream, for example, I'm able to say that particular dream is of no consequence in my waking state, because that is not, there is no reality associated with the dream. We say that particular dream is something which can be brushed aside. Why? Because even in the dream I may win a lottery. $1 million may come, $1 billion may come. But once I wake up, all those billions have no use for me. In my dream, I may be running, I may be hearing, but once I wake up, I may not be able to do any of that. So that's of no use, whatever is happening in the dream. That's why we say the experiencer is different. But here, Swamiji is telling that that particular consciousness which we say is supporting the dream is nothing but the same consciousness uh, that is supporting my waking experience as well. That Ekarupa means it is continuous consciousness, homogeneous consciousness. Means there are no two different waking consciousness and dream consciousness. That is how he is putting that particular Ekarupa, very specific word that he has used. How we must understand this Ekarupa? One is in terms of different sense objects that are there and sense object experiences are there. It is single consciousness, Ekarupa consciousness, which is experiencing all of them. I am not a hearer, smeller like that. At the same time, I am also the same consciousness who is experiencing the dream. Although my dreamer status seems to be different from my waker status, consciousness remains one and the same. How do we say that? The one single thing that is that makes it easy for us to understand is whoever is the doer, that fellow will have the memory.
Yeah.
If my dream experience is there and I'm able to recollect that once I wake up in my waking state, the memory actually indicates that it is of Ekarupa. If really speaking, Taijasa is different from Vishwa, then the memory of Taijasa must be only gathered once I go back into a dream, if I'm lucky enough. Otherwise, every night it will be a different Taijasa. A different person is there because my entire concept of my world changes every night. It's not that it's a serial, like Indian serials, where for a long time the story goes on. Unfortunately, our dream doesn't go on like that. Today, I'm having a wonderful, beautiful darshan of Lord Venkateshwara in Tirupati, and nobody is pushing me away. And for 5 minutes, I'm having wonderful darshan. And tomorrow, it can be that I went to Kashi. So there is no continuity as far as the dream is concerned. And sometimes we may change from human being to some other living form as well in my dream. So definitely it is not the same, but the remembrance which is there, the memory aspect which is there is exactly the one and the same. And that's why Waker is able to recollect what all things happen during the dream state. Some people don't, but mostly the experience says that we are able to recollect. Yeah? So here, the consciousness that supports exactly the same. However, we are bringing in that the term of called chitta. The chitta means actually it is the memory aspect which is there inside the antakaranam. Antakarana is the inner instrument, which we call it as four aspects: ego, intellect, mind, and memory. So this chitta aspect is the one which is brought in here to say that the consciousness that supports us in the waking, consciousness that support in the dream state, they are of one and the same consciousness. There are not different consciousness which are there. Yeah. So this Ekarupa is very important aspect to say that consciousness, knowledge, experiencer, the I feeling, they have to be one and the same in both the dream and waking state. Very important word he has used, and he has put that in between samvid na vidyate. Samvid ekarupyanya vidyate. So that is how the we must understand this particular word. Yeah. So now comes actually a different concept. Once we say that the experiencer, so-called experiencer of the dream and so-called experiencer of the waking, if they are of one and the same person or the same thing which is there, we cannot call that as a person, But yeah, for ease of understanding, we can say the same I continues in my waking, continues in my dream state. It obviously brings actually one more aspect which is there, that I in my waking appears to be part of everything that my experience says I am. That means the body is me, the mind is me, intellect is me, everything is me, my memories, my intellect, my this one. So the ego which is there associated with my waking appears to be one and the same with all my experiences, as well as the instrument of experience. See, it's like this, I have got this specs and I cannot see anything without specs, let us say. Yeah, my eyesight has weakened, I'm not able to see anything. You have given that specs, you put that, and then you are asked what is in front of you. My whole normal way I react is I describe everything in front of me. So there is a computer in front of me, there is a book in front of me, there's a water bottle in front of me, mobile phone in front of me, etc., etc. And I have so many people sitting there, I'm able to watch, etc. But I will never say my specs are in front of me. Normally, I don't even think about them as an object in front of me, because they become part of me. For me to experience all this world in front of, without that, I'm not able to see anything. It is complete darkness for me, for example. But once I put the specs, everything becomes clear. So this becomes me. Same experience is there with our internal instruments also, is what the Swamijis and Shastras tell us. That the mind is called Antakaranam. Karana is the instrument. Antakarana, inner instrument. So as far as the way of our gaining experience is concerned, mind remains antaha. Antaha means inner, and the I, the golaka, which is there, physical I, which is there on the body, becomes bahish, outside. So bahishkarana and antakarana. Bahishkarana has got a different meaning also of this one, but bahishkarana is, karana is, if you take it from that person, bahish is outside. So when we say that the mind itself is a karanam for me, I must be different from that. Similar to, I am different from even my other experience of I. Even if I consider my physical body as I, the specs remains the outside, so to say, and it is different. Definitely it is different. Although my experience of the world requires this specs in a full form. Yeah. Similarly, it can be sound machine, it can be anything associated, any instrument that I use. What does that actually give? This particular state, when we say that Aikya Rupena, same consciousness, that same I feeling which is there in my dream as well as my waking state. Very important, it actually separates out that I, the consciousness, from entire waking world. Till now we are telling whatever has happened in the dream, I am the same person who had the dream because I have the experience of the dream. But remember, while I'm having the experience of the dream, I don't have the waking world anymore. My body mind which is there, it may be there, but it may be completely different. As far as the mind is there, definitely there is mind, because of that the thoughts is possible, but that mind appears to be different from my waking mind. Yeah, in the waking mind, in terms of this entire experience, my brain is sleeping here. Really speaking, it is sleeping. It is resting. That is the reason why sleep is possible to, so to say. So the entire consciousness which is there becomes as Sakshi Chaitanya. The term, please remember, it becomes a witnessing consciousness. Very important concept in our understanding consciousness, so to say, is this, that my waking experience, my dream experience clearly prove the consciousness that support is one and the same. So it is samvit ekarupena na vidyate. No differences between these two, that actually makes my entire consciousness as Sakshi Chaitanyam, or one which becomes a witnessing. Sakshi, witnessing. So it witnesses all your experiences in your dream. It witnesses all your experiences in your waking state. Although while the experience is happening in the waking state, for example, it appears mixed up with that. Without that, that experience is not possible. Similarly, in the dream, it is not possible to have the dream without the support of that consciousness. However, it cannot be that it is mixed up only. It has to be a witnessing one, which is separate from all your thoughts, supporting those thoughts and creating that sense of sentiency, both in your waking as well as your dream state. Okay. Shankaracharya has in many works beautifully explains this as through a simile. He says this is like a thread running through the pearl necklace or a flower garland. So the consciousness is the support which is there. Flowers are there or pearls are there making up the garland or the thread which is there. That particular thread is the consciousness that goes through all your flowers of your experience. So whether it is dream state or whether it is your waking state, you can name that in terms of 5 koshas or different bodies. It doesn't matter how you experience them. That consciousness is the threading consciousness which goes through, which actually brings all those memories together for you. Yeah, wonderful way, poetic way of looking at it, and nobody but Shankaracharya is capable of bringing such wonderful similes for us. Yeah. Okay. Verse 5, we will go into dream state. Any questions, anybody? So most important concept, consciousness remains the same between sleep and this one, and that consciousness is different from both the experiences. So it gains the status of a witnessing consciousness or Sakshi Chaitanya. Yeah?
Shankarji,
Lata.
Shankarji, what are the words you use for experience and experiencer? You use the Sanskrit words?
The Bhokta and Bhogya. So Bhokta is the experiencer. Bhogya
Okay,
is the one you experiences there.
thank you.
Sometimes they are also called as the Karta and Karya. Karta is the doer. So there is a doership associated, there is an enjoyership associated with both these experiences that we go through, both in dream as well as in the waking state. Yeah, and that doer is the one which is given a name, or bhokta in terms of that enjoyer or actor, you can say, karta, one who takes action. Both of these concepts put together becomes that Vishwa or Taijasa. So when we take Vishwa, it is both doer and enjoyer. So once you take an action and you do an action, results come, and I am enjoying those results both in waking, similarly in my dream. Okay. So when we talk of Vishwa Taijasa, it's a combination of Karta and Bhokta. And really speaking, overcoming these two concepts in my mind is what all the sadhana is about. I have to say that although my mind is feeling that I am the Karta, although my experience says that I am the Bhokta, I am not this Karta and Bhokta, because unless that Sakshi Chaitanyam, a witnessing consciousness is there to support, all of these are actually inert layers. Whether I take Annamaya Kosha, Pranamaya Kosha, Manomaya Kosha, Vijnanamaya Kosha, or Anandamaya Kosha, the sheets which are there are all inert. We know that. And that particular inert somehow appears to be sentient in the presence of this Sakshi Chaitanya. So we say Sakshi only because I am experiencing. But once I give this status of this consciousness having a different status altogether, then we say that in the mere presence of that, this will happen. So the Sakshi will change to Kutastha, but we'll come to that a bit later. Yeah? I'm just giving you the entire concept here. so that when the verse comes, it's much easier for us to understand. So it is like this, Lataji. I go and stand in front of a mirror, for example. I am seeing my image in the mirror. Yeah? So I get a temporary status of someone standing in front of the mirror. So I become object for that image which is there in the mirror. So I'm getting a temporary status. So Sakshi Chaitanyam is a witnessing consciousness of my waking state, witnessing consciousness of my dream state, only like me standing in front of the mirror, getting a temporary status of seeing into the mirror. Really speaking, I don't have any such status, really speaking. If I move away from there, my experience, me doesn't change. I remain exactly the same. Whether that particular thing I am standing in front of the mirror, I have a choice of moving around. I am not bound to the mirror in any way. But image thinks, as long as image exists, that he is bound to me. So from that perspective, this is called a Sakshi Chaitanyam, witnessing consciousness into this. Really, there is no witnessing. In the very mere presence, everything happens. That particular thing of whatever is happening this in the samsara goes on. But I give that status of Sakshi Chaitanyam from my point of view of an experiencer or an enjoyer in waking state and dream state. That is how we must understand this particular song.
Shankarji, Hari Om, this is Rashmi.
Rashmiji.
I have a question about Vritti Vyapti and Phala Vyapti you explained. So
yeah,
when we see apple, that is a Vritti, and we know that is Phala Vyapti. That's the way we know things. So for enlightenment, we need Brahmakara Vritti. How can you explain that part, or it's not appropriate to ask this question?
It is not appropriate only at this stage in our this one. This particular thing will definitely come later on towards the end of the chapter. So because once you get a Brahmakara Vritti and all, you are enlightened person already.
Okay.
We will take it up.
But it's a Vritti. It's a Vritti. Right? It's a Vritti. Brahmakara.
Correct. But that Vritti, but again, remember that Vritti that we are bringing in is only a temporary status for that Brahman. Remember that from that perspective, we will not go into details right now, because there is no real Brahma, because Brahma cannot be objectified like I objectify a apple. Cannot be objectified. But I am doing it like a pole vault. People take a pole, they go right up to the top. So I'm using that pole. So I use similarly Brahmakara Vritti, so to say, to reach that top. But if I want to cross over, I have to leave that Brahmakara Vritti also.
Sure.
So it's a temporary this one that I make use of. Okay.
Okay.
Because you asked about this question just for others. No, just for others to this one small this one is why this Vritti Vyapti and Phala Vyapti can be different. Is suppose there are 10 different fruits in front of me, because you gave the example of an apple. 10 different fruits in a basket, and a child is brought in front of the basket and he says that you select one. All the 10 becomes a Vritti Vyapti, because all 10 will come into the mind of the child. But he likes apple. So when he goes in front of Swamiji for prasad, he will say, give me banana, because he likes banana. Means, although Vritti Vyapti of 10 fruits have gone in, Phala Vyapti happened only for banana. And that is driven by your vasanas. That is how we must understand these two concepts. Okay, I think it's already 8:45. We'll take up verse 5 in Sushupti Avastha in the next class. Okay. Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadhaya Purnameva Vasishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Harihi Om Shri Gurubhyo Namaha. Harihi Om.